Hi folks, Florida Man here. I'm bringing you an after-action report on a game I played on Play Diplomacy a little before my hiatus. This game had the least original name I've ever seen. It was called Ranked Game. I played as France, but I wasn't the original player. So I'll go through what happened before I joined, and then explain what happened when I stepped in. Spring 1901. Original Recipe France opens in a way that leaves open the possibility of getting 3 builds in 1901. However, England opens to the Channel, and Germany also opens in a way that leaves open the possibility of getting 3 builds, by opening to Denmark, Kiel, and Ruhr. In the East, the first impression the moves give off is that a juggernaut is probably happening, although it's less because Russia and Turkey seem extremely committed to each other, and more because Russia successfully landed in Galicia. In fall 1901, however, Russia supports Galicia moving into Ukraine, which changes the way that first set of moves looks. Austria takes Greece for a second build, while Turkey moves as if its primary concern is getting its fleet out into the Mediterranean, which could indicate either a plan to attack Austria or an effort to fight Italy. In any case, the Russian position in the south looks strong for now. Italy made the very typical Italian opening, taking Tunis. Unfortunately, original Recipe France NMR'd here, failing to acquire Portugal or Belgium. To make matters worse, Germany supports England into Belgium, which would have signaled a problem even if France hadn't NMR'd, since it signals that there is an alliance in the West that France is not a part of. In spring 1902, Russia and England begin fighting in the north, while England and Germany begin working together against France. England gets units into Irish Sea and the Channel, while Germany moves into Burgundy. Italy also decides to join in the action and occupies Piedmont and the Tyrrhenian Sea. France continues not to move. In the southeast, alliances seem to be mangled and tangled up knots. Russia tries to go into Galicia again, which belies the idea that there's an Austro-Russian alliance. But Russia also occupies the Black Sea, which is not normally considered a friendly move toward Turkey. Meanwhile, Turkey attacks Greece, and Austria and Italy work together to get Austria into the Aegean. The Austrian moves are accompanied by a general Austrian movement south, so Austria and Turkey are clearly genuinely fighting. Fall 1902. I take over the French position. Initially, all 3 of my neighbors continue to occupy threatening positions relative to me. I bounce Italy's attempt to take Marseille, I finally take Portugal, and I try to walk into Burgundy, although unfortunately Germany did not leave. England, Italy, and Germany have me pretty well surrounded, so I begin trying to talk my way out of the situation. Elsewhere, Germany and England are working together to attack Russia. Russia and Austria now seem to be clearly allied, and Turkey and Italy are reduced to 3 centers each by the Austro-Russian alliance. Fortunately for me, Germany attempted to walk into English-controlled Belgium without English permission at this point. In the build phase, Germany gets a new army, as do Austria and I. We're all well situated to stalemate each other with this increased land force. In spring 1903, England and I ally against Germany, and England begins pulling units back toward the North and the North Sea region, also taking Sweden. Unfortunately for England, Russia does not consider their conflict over, as the Russian moves in the north make clear. England seems to have convinced Germany they were still on the same side, considering that Germany both built an army and then followed up by moving east. Elsewhere, Italy is poised to lose another home center, but he still doesn't abandon trying to fight me quite yet. Turkey holds on by sheer virtue of the strength of the Turkish defenses. Fall 1903 sees Russia perfectly outguess Turkey, as well as taking Norway from England, gaining 3 new centers and becoming the board leader. Austria takes Rome, and Italy finally starts paying real attention to Austria. England takes Denmark and holds on to Sweden, while I reposition to join in the attack on Germany. Germany NMRs here, which was probably a bad moment for that. In spring 1904, England becomes too powerful to be allowed to continue, and I seemingly stab him for the single center of Belgium. This isn't something I generally advise. England retakes Norway from Russia, while Austria stabs Russia for Bulgaria and takes Galicia. Fall 1904, I reposition to go after England. Germany does the same to the best of his ability, although that ability is pretty limited, with exactly 1 fleet. Austria positions to take the last Italian home center and occupy Smyrna, while Russia retakes Norway and Bulgaria and effectively defends himself against Austria. Spring 1905, I switch back to siding with England, and we begin working together to tear Germany apart. England takes Kiel, while I position to attack Holland. At the same time, I keep my fleets in reserve in Iberia. Austria sticks a fork in Italy because he's done. In the east, Austria and Russia spar somewhat inconclusively. Fall 1905, Austria starts to gain more of an advantage over Russia. England unfortunately gets the gains out of Germany so far, but on the bright side, Russia is still fighting England, despite fighting losing battles on two fronts at this point. Spring 1906, I position to take Munich and Tunis. England supports Russia into Berlin, while Germany takes the Channel. Austria takes over basically the whole southeast. Fall 1906, I successfully take Tunis and Munich. Germany keeps himself alive by taking Brest from me, and Austria tries to move in on my action by taking Bohemia. Russia is reduced to home centers plus a few scattered additional centers that I can see will be easily picked off if anyone attacks him. In the build phase, Austria gets a third fleet, while England gets a first army. My build is another fleet in Marseille. In spring 1907, Austria continues conquering the world, capturing Sevastopol and Ankara. I take Kiel with English support, while England moves toward taking Brest with my consent. My units in the Mediterranean move to block the region up, while Austria is not yet moving seriously against me. In fall 1907, I take the Ionian Sea because Austria made a questionable guess. England supports me into Berlin and moves to secure St. Petersburg. At this point, Austria, England, and myself are approaching having stalemate lines with each other, with the exception that Austria can't block advancement through Germany or the Mediterranean perfectly yet. The game would seem to be approaching its end. In the build phase, I get a fleet and an army. Austria gets armies, and Russia destroys his unit in Prussia to preserve units closer to his actual centers. In spring 1908, England takes St. Petersburg, Austria takes Moscow, Russia takes Ankara, and I walk into Greece. England moves into the mid-Atlantic Ocean, Channel, and North Atlantic Ocean, which would be a very frightening thing for France a lot of the time. However, in this case, I had recognized that England couldn't eliminate me as things stood, without giving Austria a solo. I was okay with England making these maneuvers to reinforce me in the south, ultimately get those fleets further away from my home centers, as well as England's, and most likely not cause any problems for me in the long run, as they might if they were bottled up in the north. Fall 1908, England and I advance as an armada through the Mediterranean. I give up Greece to retake the Ionian. England and Austria separately do most of the work of killing off Russia, reducing him to just two centers. Spring 1909, Austria supports Russia in retaking St. Pete, while Russia attacks Ankara, and I take Rome. Austria does retake Ionian Sea, which creates the potential for him to blockade me for a long time in the Mediterranean. In the retreat phase, Austria and I both retreat our units to Apulia, destroying both the retreating Rome unit and the retreating Ionian unit. Fall 1909, Austria resumes attacking Russia, while England retakes St. Petersburg, reducing Russia to only Ankara. I take Naples while Austria pushes forward into Piedmont. England moves units back up into the mid-Atlantic Ocean and Channel, while I take Prussia. In the build, I get a rebuilt fleet and a new army. Austria also rebuilds his army. Spring 1910, I use Prussia to tap Warsaw, allowing England to take Moscow. In the Mediterranean, the Armada is moving towards being able to retake the Ionian Sea. England vacates the Channel again, moving to Irish Sea. In the south, Austria takes Ankara. Fall 1910, Russia is left out in the cold, finally dying at Austria's hands. The Anglo-French Southern Armada continues repositioning to go for the Ionian. England actually NMRs this season, but it didn't matter, because Austria didn't attack anything English held. Spring 1911, England begins cutting a path south, descending through Ukraine and convoying a fresh army onto Norway. England for some reason does not move any of its fleets toward the southern front with Austria this season, though. Fall 1911, England moves his mid-Atlantic unit south, and he and I retake the Ionian Sea, using an English fleet as the tip of the spear. England takes Sevastopol from Austria, as Austria guesses incorrectly at which center he needed to protect. Spring 1912, Austria retakes Sevastopol, but I break through his German line and take Silesia, while England takes Adriatic Sea. England's units are now almost all through the danger zone around my home centers, closer to Austria than to me. In fall, England takes Warsaw, I take Venice, and we also recapture the Ionian Sea. In 1913, I move into Brest, while the Southern Armada positions to convoy into Syria. In fall, I exit Brest, and England and I bounce in Belgium. The convoy into Syria succeeds, also move into Tyrolia and a convoy into Livonia, and the Austrian defense is now so full of holes that it's obviously untenable. Spring 1914, we take Trieste and Aegean Sea. England the North Sea. At the same time, I move into Ruhr and Picardy. This season is when I set up for the stab. Fall 1914. I take Brest, Holland, and Ankara, as well as moving into Eastern Mediterranean and Kiel. I also take Warsaw from England. Although England takes Bulgaria from Austria, England's net results this year are negative. So in the build phase, England destroys Barents Sea, while I get a new fleet and a new army. In spring 1915, I go straight for Denmark and Berlin, as well as sneaking into Serbia and supporting myself into Smyrna. Austria goes after Trieste and Warsaw successfully, while England repositions toward the front with me. But the English military is too many steps behind mine. In fall 1915, I hold on to Denmark, Serbia, and Smyrna, and I also support myself into Constantinople, although I lose Ankara. The final board position is what you see now. Surprisingly, for me, from where I started, the game was a French victory. I think this really shows the value in investing in a long-term alliance with another player. If you can really build a trusting relationship with someone else, in which you each move around and through each other's territory, and you can lull them into a false sense of security by the endgame, the results can be pretty amazing. A sudden stab and wham! You've suddenly gone from negotiating to ask them to keep their scary units a little further away from your centers to soloing. And this is one of those games that it's a pleasure to reminisce about. A game of twists and turns, where it feels like I exercised my patience to the greatest return on investment possible. I hope you liked this video. If so, please show your appreciation with likes and comments, and subscribing if you haven't already. And if you want to support the channel beyond that, you can join the people whose names now appear on screen, this channel's patrons and translators. Whatever you do, stay tuned for the next Florida Man Diplomacy video. Until next time, Florida Man out.